Though in recent decline, superbikes are still the pinnacle of motorcycle advancement, performance and technology. They represent the biggest thrill in motorcycling and are designed to do just one thing: go fast. In this two-part Superbike Shootout test, we put two of the most famous superbikes ever made head to head, on the road and on the track. Harking back to 2001, the GSXR 1000 is legendary. Throughout its history, it's won and lost championships, it's been plagiarised, battered and bruised, and is currently facing extinction by the Eurocratic powers that be. But the GSXR in this test will endure, only facing death by thrashing or crashing. Most recently updated in 2017, our Gixxer has a 200 horsepower inline 4 motor with variable valve timing, 200 kilos wet weight, and sports an exhaust the size of a nuclear bomb. Yamaha's R1 is equally famous. The latest edition packs a 200 horsepower whiz-banging cross-plane crank 4-cylinder motor. The modern R1 is a no-compromise weapon and has experienced huge amounts of success in racing and in the showroom since its 2015 introduction. With sharp and compact looks, a sound more akin to a MotoGP bike, and a top-drawer electronics package, it's a tough bike to beat. As both machines in this test are our own bikes and not part of some press test fleet, like most owned bikes have had more than a bit of fettling. Since ownership, our own experience of the GSXR 1000 is that it's been more than a handful. A combination of a monster engine combined with bargain basement shock and a steering damper that basically doesn't do anything means that as soon as you start to ride it hard, instability, tank slappers and near-death experiences are never far away. Our own experience ended in a 140-mile-an-hour tank slapper crash last year at Snetterton, and that experience put the nail in the coffin for us in terms of our opinion of the stock modern Gixxer 1000. But as you can see, she's back from the dead with some dedication and some flexed credit cards. As you can see, she's now 100% straight. She's straight as an arrow and she's been built back again. But this time with a totally revised chassis components from Nitron. We've got a Nitron shock and Nitron forks with a bi-turbo race steering damper. The combination of this has totally fixed the stability issues. We've also complemented that with a Brembo RCS 19 master cylinder, as the previous one was broke, and a brand new race dash as well, because that original dash was split into about 3 million pieces right across the Norfolk countryside. So she's had a bit of a potted history, this machine, but as you can see, she's mint now and she's ready to go. Over to you, Ollie.
This is my R1. It's a 2016 60th anniversary edition in the Kenny Roberts colours, and I think it looks absolutely stunning. I've owned the bike for just over 2.5 years, which is actually the longest time I've owned a road bike for. I've owned quite a few different bikes in the past, including mostly Japanese liter sports bikes, but also a Gen 2 S1000RR. However, nothing comes close to the thrill and excitement I get from this weapon. So like most bikes, it's not without its flaws. The standard braking setup on the R1 really wasn't great, especially coming from the BMW Brembo setup. There's also quite a snatchy throttle, and the battery actually died on the demo ride, which really wasn't great either. However, this didn't put me off. The sound of the exhaust and the overall experience of the bike, made me buy it, and here we are today. So what have I changed on the bike? Aesthetically, not a massive amount. I think the livery looks absolutely fantastic. I've changed a few bits such as the grips, bar ends, a few carbon bits here and there, and of course a paint protection film. And in terms of the brake setup, I went with a full hell suite. So I've got a master cylinder, calipers front and rear, including the rear underslung caliper, and also braided lines all over. In terms of crash protection, I've gone with R&G, and also there's R&G rear sets on there as well. I normally run an Agrapovic D-Cat system, but for this test, I've gone and fitted the cat just to quieten it down a little bit. So there we go.
The first thing to say about superbikes is that they're now often branded as irrelevant for the road. The consistent narrative is that they're too fast, they're too stiff, and riding them for any period of time will see you booking into your nearest chiropractor and turning your wrists into mashed potato. The reality is that superbikes can do pretty much everything that any other road bike can do. Nick Sanders circumnavigated the world in 19 days on his 2005 R1, covering 19,800 miles and averaging over 1,000 miles a day. Bruce Smart of Teapot One spent 442 days riding his GSXR 1000 across 54 countries and covered an incredible 74,000 miles. On day one of our 2-day road test, we covered just 170 miles. But more importantly, every one of those 170 miles counted. We were engaged and alive for all of them, not wishing we were on anything else, as we carved corner to corner through mountain passes. The GSXR is probably the most familiar to most riders swinging a leg over one. It sounds conventional, has a familiar riding position, it's light and flickable to manoeuvre at low speeds, handles in a predictable manner, and has a smooth and confidence-inspiring motor to use. Jumping off my own Gixxer 750, it's quite familiar. That is until you open the throttle. The Suzuki GSXR engine is an animal. It has monster power and drive everywhere in the rev range due to its VVT trickery. This means you don't need to rev the nuts off it to get it going, and you can be lazy with your gearing if you want to be. But once you do get going, man, you better strap yourself in, because this thing is about to go warp speed. Although it's hard to fully experience it on the road, the top end power of the Gixxer is unbelievable. It's so fast and you feel every single one of the brake horsepower on offer. Although the Gixxer has a silencer that's more visually aligned to a submarine than a motorcycle exhaust, the noise it makes is incredible. Combine that with an awesome quick shifter blipper, the audible experience is simply fantastic, and it matches its powerful performance.
Oh, what a fun bike. The GSXR, the one thing I noticed straight away was the difference in the ease of ride, ease of use. The R1's very sort of snatchy compared to the Gixxer. It's a very smooth sort of power delivery, smooth engine, smooth throttle response. And the seating position as well. On the R1 you're very on top, on this you're sort of in, and it's less wristy, which is nice. In terms of the upgrades Jeff has made on the suspension and the brakes, that's absolutely transformed it. So yeah, really good impression overall, and I'm off to ride it now. So.
The R1 is comparatively less familiar. Its whiz-banging cross-plane crank engine ensures your riding experience is uniquely R1. It's a bit of a pig to start, easy to stall, harder to manoeuvre, and riding it at slow speeds has us slipping the clutch in first gear at speeds of less than 30 miles an hour. If this all sounds bad, it's forgotten the moment that you leave the car park and town centre, because once it's up to speed, it is fantastic. Its compact frame and engaged riding position suddenly start to make sense, and you feel at one with the bike and the road in front of you. Ironically, Ollie has this R1 motif applied to his tank. And it's ironic because that's exactly how you feel with the R1. Bike and rider coming together as one. I spent most of my time recalibrating how the Yamaha was in reality in comparison to my expectations. I had this expectation that the motor would just be an animal that was wheeling every time the throttle was opened. In reality, it was smooth. Of course, it's got amazing drive, but it wasn't in any way intimidating, and the bike was planted. I expected it to be crippling based on some of the online reviews that I'd read, but in reality it was more than acceptable. I expected the stock suspension to be poor in comparison to the aftermarket hardware on my own bike and on the GSXR 1000 in this test, but the reality again was that it handled great, if it was a little less plush and controlled in this road going environment in comparison to the Gixxer's Nitron setup.
Wow, the R1, initial impressions are that it is absolutely fantastic. In terms of my expectation, it's much easier to ride than I ever thought it would be. And overall, it's just much better than I thought it was going to be. I think it's really, really top notch, and I can't wait to talk a little bit more about it later. But for now, we're going to ride it a bit more.
As is often the case, feeling is one thing and the reality is another. So we put them up against a tape measure and the results matched our feelings. The R1 has a 1 cm higher seat, 2 cm lower bars, 3 cm higher pegs, and the combination of these three measurements undoubtedly put you in a more racy riding position. A higher seat and pegs with lower bars, although aftermarket rear sets fitted to the R1 may skew this slightly, even though they were on the lowest setting. Objectively against the tape measure, the GSXR has a more relaxed riding position, and that makes road riding on it more comfortable. The seat was also an interesting one. Both riders were sure that the R1 was a harder seat, but against our Shore hardness tester, they were actually equal. Although the Gixxer has a thicker amount of padding, and you definitely feel its extra comfort on longer stints. Against the weighing scales, the R1 really impresses. With 194 kilo weight versus 199 kilos of the Gixxer, both bikes weighed with tanks that were a 20-mile ride away from being brimmed with fuel. It's not hard to see that in race spec, the R1 would be a really light bike. Fuel-wise, it has to be said the R1 is slightly worse than the GSXR, its fuel light appearing consistently around the 90-mile mark, in comparison to the GSXR's typical 110 miles. Japanese bikes are often and rightly criticised for their braking performance. A mushy compromise of huge vein-like lengths of rubber brake lines leading to ABS pumps, with said pump controlled by electronics that feel about as modern as a Commodore 64. Brake hard and the ABS interference rears its head all too quickly, leaving you feeling that you're heading for the grass verge instead of actually coming to a stop. In the case of the R1, Ollie resorted to a fully revised Hell setup, yet opted to retain the ABS for legality purposes. This hardware investment has significantly improved matters, and our R1 now has excellent road-going braking, lots of feel, lots of power, and rear wheel lift is possible with minimum ABS interference. Similarly, Jeff's Gixxer is fitted with a Brembo RCS 19 master cylinder. This seems to have remedied some of the weakness here as well, combining with a better fork strength from the Nitron suspension to reduce front fork dive and improve performance. Rolling stoppies are now possible on the Gixxer 1000, even with the ABS on. On the road, both bikes do a phenomenal job in the handling department. The Gixxer is light on its feet, it's flickable and tracks a beautiful line. Sitting slightly taller in the front than the R1 means cornering downhill on the road gives a more comfortable feel, less like you're pushing all of your weight through the front tyre. In terms of the R1, there is something very right going on here handling wise. Unable to put a finger on exactly what it is, it's enough to just say it corners really well and holds a beautiful cornering line and just feels perfectly balanced front to rear. The engine braking seemed the ideal balance of allowing the corner to flow with enough resistance to hold a tight line. Looks-wise, both bikes look great in our opinion. The Suzuki has a bigger stature, matching its increased comfort. The R1 is compact and arguably has some nicer design, finer details. It's noteworthy that 80% of our Instagram followers preferred the R1 looks-wise. It's fair to say that electronic aids are a massive part of superbikes these days. In this road test, it's also fair to say that most of the time they were untroubled and will leave full evaluation until the track test. Even on the road though, the R1 undeniably has the edge with many more setting possibilities in comparison to the Suzuki's simple plus or minus traction stroke wheelie control setup. On the GSXR, I ended up opting for level 1, which allowed me to do exactly what I wanted, and it was the closest experience to the non-traction control bike that I'm used to. But in the end, our 2-day road test just felt like the start of something. The R1 and the GSXR have their distinctives. They have strengths and weaknesses on the road. But these are superbikes at the end of the day, and both of us decided to reserve full judgment until the next part of the test, the track.
Fall back just a little, don't wanna lead you on, don't wanna push a feeling and make the feeling go. You see, I got your number, but still I ain't used to phone, no. I let it breathe for a minute, baby. Next thing I know, you call. Damn. One thing I know about love, you never know when it's coming, but you sure know it when it does. Yeah. One thing I know about love, you might get what you ask for, so you better be sure it's what you want. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So how good has the last few days been, Ollie, riding these superbikes?
Oh, it's been amazing. The roads have been perfect. The weather's been prime, you know, and the bikes are just amazing. absolutely flawless. Awesome few days.
As part of this test, obviously, part 1 is on the road, which is what we're going to be talking about right now, but parts on the track as well. We've done previous versus tests, and we found that the tyres made quite a big difference in our findings in the end. So we had to choose like a control tyre, and one that was up for doing start-stop on the road and be really good performance for these two bikes, but also one that could handle fast group sustained track day riding as well. And in my opinion, there was only really one choice for me, and that was the Dunlop Sportsmart TT. I think both of our impressions of this tyre have been really good on the road, haven't they?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, there's been a lot of stop-starting, a lot of them cooling down. And with this tyre, it's just been there straight away. We haven't been fiddling around with, pressures. It's just, we use the OEM pressures and then we're just there, ready to go. There's been no slips, no slides. It's been awesome, and really confidence inspiring is what you want. And for the different conditions that we've ridden.
Yeah, great stability. That's why I personally really like the Dunlops. Great stability, and it works well with a good and tuned suspension package, which is why I really like them.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say as well is the Knox gear that we've used over this couple of days.
It's hot.
It's damn hot!
It's been hot. It's been absolutely fantastic, flawless for this type of motorcycle. I've personally been wearing like a AAAC approved outfit with the Honister jacket and Shield jeans. Ollie, you've been wearing something different in the Urban Pro and Richmond jeans, but both setups I think have been fantastic, and they're perfect for riding this bike or this type of bike as they are riding all the other different stuff. So if you want to find out what we've been wearing, we're going to put all the links in the description for the gear that we've been using. So in the end, I don't think we've come up with a clear winner for you guys, unfortunately. Both bikes are not stock, they're our own. There's personal preference involved, all that kind of stuff. But really be interested to hear what you guys think. So
Definitely.
Please let us know in the comment section. That has been our part 1 of our Superbike shootout between the R1 and the GSXR 1000 on the road in the beautiful English Lake District. Part 2 is coming up, and we're heading off tomorrow to one of the gnarliest and personally my favourite track in the UK. That's Alton Park. So stick around and stay tuned. Part 2 is coming very soon.
Thanks for watching part 1 of the Knox Superbike Shootout. In the next episode, join us as we turn the heat up. Take a deep breath and twist the throttle until it won't go any further at arguably the UK's most gnarly track, Alton Park.